Well, hey there, we're talking about the curious case of corn smut and can it be prevented with a fungicide treatment at time of planting? In this edition of Extreme Ag's Cutting the Curve.
Welcome to Extreme Ag's Cutting the Curve podcast, where you get a guaranteed return on investment of your time as we cut your learning curve with the information you can apply to your farming operation immediately. Extreme Ag, we've already made the mistakes, so you don't have to. Managing your farm's water resources is a critical component to a successful and sustainable farming operation. Advanced Drainage Systems helps farmers just like you increase their yields up to 30% with their technologically advanced water management products. Visit adspipe.com to see how they can keep your business flowing. Now, here's your host, Damian Mason.
Welcome to another fantastic episode of Extreme Ag's Cutting the Curve. We got Kevin Matthews coming at us from somewhere in North Carolina in a spray rig. I've got Gail Stratman from FMC coming at us from his office. And we're talking about something that these guys already did a very brief video on. And we said, let's go more in depth on that because this could be a big game changer for a lot of farmers. Basically, in a nutshell, Kevin's going to tell us a discovery post hailstorm. You don't plan for hailstorms, but what do we always like to say? Plan for the worst, hope for the best. He got hailed out on some corn, but he didn't get hailed out. He decided how he wants to salvage the corn. Take us back to the hail and then where we're going forward and why this involves fungicide.
Yes, so we got normally hail is not a big issue for us during wheat harvest, which is the second week of June, third week of June. We got a big hailstorm. We had corn that was at V8. So that's not awfully big corn, but the hail was unlike what we normally see. It's golf ball size to a little bit larger. That's very unusual for our area. So in the past, we just had small hailstorms, and as soon as it happened, we'd go out there and hit the stuff with fungicide as quickly as the ground allowed us to get on the field. This year, this is our third year using the Xyway fungicide with our planter. We put it down in a 2x2 form. And so the hail hit, and I mean, it was bad. We went out and video, we checked, we dissected the stalks, and thank goodness our ear leaf had not got damaged yet. So we was able to realize that immediately. But from the ear leaf down, it was completely shredded. It was just a stalk is all that was there, no leaf tissue. So I spoke with my agronomists that work with me, and they got research, and they said, wait a minute, we use Xyway on those farms. Said head smut's what we're mostly concerned about with the hail damage, and when we think you're protected, don't spray, don't go out and spray. Well, that was pretty hard for me, Gail. I know y'all got a good product, but I still, ounce of prevention's worth a pound of cure. I'm gonna go get it, but so that's what we held off. And Damian, I did split the farm in half later at about R3 just to see if it would be any yield benefit. But at R3, it was very healthy corn. Pretty much disease free because there was no foliage at the bottom for the disease to start with. The hail done took care of that.
Yeah.
But it's a learning experience for me, and it turned out to be a blessing because it'd been a week or two later before we could have gotten the field unless we'd done it early.
So Gail, the takeaway here is, because I watched the 3-minute video that Kevin shot in the field, and that's when we're like, and Will says, we got to cover this topic more in depth because this is kind of a big game changer. First off, using fungicide at time of planting is kind of a new thing anyhow. You've got the product Xyway, and we've talked about this quite a bit. It does best when you keep it in the 2x2, not on top of the seed. Yep. We discovered all that. Kevin's going out there and using it, and he's in a part of the world that has a lot of disease pressure. So, first time I ever went to his farm, we talked a lot about fungicide because that was, August and his field day time, etc. So the idea is, it's not that the hail, in other words, nobody's going to go and start doing this just because of hail, because they hoped like hell they don't have hail to begin with. The real big takeaway is because of the hail, it gave Kevin a chance to experiment with not using a secondary fungicide treatment because of the smut.
Yeah, the bottom line with Xyway is you've got that level of fungal protection already inside the plant, whether you need it or not, in regards to that hail event. Like I said, a lot of times what happens with a hail event is you lose a lot of leaf area in that process because the hail strips it away. Well, that makes it awful difficult a lot of times to get a foliar fungicide actually in that plant to protect it and help that plant what like you're wanting to do, because you've lost all the leaves. Having this inside the plant already
Yeah.
can provide that level of suppression of head smut, and keep that pathogen from getting started as readily, and kind of suppress the level of infection that you get. It'll be interesting to see in these hail events, not only the leaf area we leave and the disease there, but as we get a little bit later on, and as we experience, farther west here in the Corn Belt, we get hail events pretty regularly, and you get a lot of stalk bruising from that. Well,
Mhm.
that's also an entry point for some fungal pathogens. So, be interesting to see how those comparisons go this year as well, where guys have got Xyway on to see if we to see how the stalk diseases progress, and if we can suppress and keep the stalk integrity better where we've had some hail events.
Kevin, I got to ask the question because, you know, I, I I think of hail, and we don't see it that much around where I am, thank goodness. In Indiana, we just don't have it as bad. And I just look at that field and I think silage. I think the best option is to try and chop it into silage, or maybe call the crop insurance adjuster and get the bush hog out here as soon as he comes and does a measurement and writes you a check. And you're thinking, no, within the first 48 hours, hit it with fungicide. That's not that. I never knew that, or never would have thought crossed my mind until I watched your video. Has this been something you've done for a long time, or is this something you came upon the last few years? Like, hey, if you get hit with hail, fungicide as soon as possible.
We've been doing it for quite a few years. As we've gotten taller sprayers and options and helicopters to spray with, it's become more of a normal. But again, we don't have it that often. So probably 2 out of 5 years that we have this issue. Right now, this was the most devastating that we've experienced, and we did notify our crop insurance agent, Damon, because I wasn't real sure. The bruising that Gail just spoke of. So on the northwest side of all the stalks was terrible bruising, and the plants, our agronomist was watching. He was just in them again last week, and they look good. I mean, it's more than likely 180, 200 bushel corn. I wouldn't give you 50 bushels for it, a week after the storm.
Mm-hmm. So you've been doing the fungicide immediately after hail, unless the field's riddled. I mean, obviously, at some point you say fungicide or no fungicide, this field's done, right?
Gail's got more experience with that where he lives than I do, but in my opinion, it's going to depend on the growth stage that the hailstorm occurs at.
And then keeping the flag, keeping the ear leaf was the critical. Maybe that was the critical decision. What do you think, Gail? Were you consulted on this?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Kevin's right. It really depends on that growth stage of that plant. We had some hail events here in my local area here, the 4th of July and the week after, when we had corn just into pollination, and beans just starting pod fill, and it was pretty severe. And in those cases, the decision was made for you pretty quick. It didn't take a whole lot of deciphering to understand what those fields were going to amount to. It's those situations that Kevin gets in, or like he's describing here, where it's a little early in the growing season, where that plant can probably handle a little bit of damage to it from a foliage standpoint, but it's going to come back out of it as long as you protect some of those critical, the ear leaf and some of that stuff above that where you can really see the benefit of that fungicide being in the plant, whether you do that foliar or do that with Xyway. But like I said, there's definitely situations where it becomes readily apparent that this is silage or something less than that,
Mhm.
and you can make that decision pretty quick and move on from there. But and like I said, that growth stage, the later on you get, once you hit those reproductive stages, you can't regrow those leaves. So that plant is basically starving to fill that ear. You get so much physical damage there isn't much left. So, earlier in the season, you can stand it. Later in the season, pretty tough to come back from.
Okay, I'm going to keep that's good information. So I'm going to keep asking quick fire questions. Kevin, if it was a month later, different decision? In other words, if it was mid-July or something like that, it would have been a different decision?
Yeah, I mean, if there's just so many variables there, Damien. I mean, if it's right during pollination and you really stripped it off, it's going to be hard to spend much more money.
Right.
Depending on what kind of insurance you got too. Every farmer's got different levels of insurance, so that's going to play in.
Next question. If you are in North Carolina, where you have a lot of disease pressure because of climatological issues, if this hailstorm happens somewhere, say Minnesota, is there less likelihood of smut? In other words, I know that we're saying, boy, the Xyway turns out it saved us a lot of hassle because it already protected the plant, post opening up with the hail. That's in North Carolina. If I was in a northern climate, Dakotas, Minnesota, would I have less need for it because there's less smut, or smut prevalent all over, Gail?
It's a soil-borne pathogen, so generally it's in the residue and it maintains itself for a long time. So even crop rotations aren't going to get rid of it. It's going to be there. Crop rotations can suppress the amount of spores and fungal infection that you can see, but once you have it, it's in those fields. It's there for a long time. It's pretty much as long as you're growing crops. So it's friendly. Like I said, it's in Kevin's part of the world. It's in Minnesota. It's in our part of the world, the farther south.
I was supposed to say, does 4 to 6 months of below freezing temperature whack it? It doesn't.
No.
Okay.
It's an extremely hardy spore and a pathogen that cold weather temperatures and that sort of thing don't seem to have any effect upon it.
Okay, then going back to Kevin, if this experiment works and you've got a great example or great opportunity to turn this into an experiment that you didn't plan on back in the spring, but you're doing it now, does that mean Xyway goes on more acres? Because it's not just because of hail, because obviously planning for hail is not the thing. It's more that it alleviates a fungicide pass, very likely for you, for smut protection come August.
Yeah, like I said, I think there's a lot of benefits there. There's the disease protection we've always talked about. There's some of the other physiological things that we're seeing around root mass development and water uptake. This hail piece of it and that protection that can provide because of the timing and how you put it on, I think is another piece that really kind of demonstrates the value of changing it up a little bit and utilizing a product this way that's already in the plant versus trying to treat a problem or put a Band-Aid on a problem after the issue or a problem has already occurred.
Yeah, and Gail's right. I mean, we're just using more and more of it, Damien. The head smut's really not what we're after. We're after all our foliar leaf diseases, but this is just another piece. It's just icing on top of the cake, really. You get right down to it. Yeah, it's just not an issue. Most varieties are bred to help alleviate that, and they are defensive against it. But when you damage that ear and damage the tissue, then that's when the head smut is more prevalent. But for us, it's really not a problem unless we have an event like this. But it's just nice to know. We're just using more and more of it because we're not having to go back in a lot of these fields. We're getting really good control in this heavy disease environment.
So that's the question. So corn smut's not really your biggest concern, unless it's a hail or something like that. So you're not sold on using this product because of corn smut, because that's not really usually that big of a threat to you. But the fact that it looks pretty evident that it prevents or saves you a late season fungicide pass, maybe not always, but generally, right?
Well, it's the insurance. I mean, it's kind of like having a rider put on your insurance policy with additional insurance at no extra premium cost. You're just getting a little more insurance in this deal.
Yeah. So anyway, what are you, this is kind of new to you, Gail, or is this something that is this something you thought was going to happen and now we got to see it, or are you
Well,
still
this is something we've tried to look at more in the past, and again, it becomes a little bit of a challenge trying to get the disease and the conditions and everything to line up so that you can create that situation to really test it. Like I said, Xyway is labeled for suppression of head smut. So we've collected data in the past that demonstrates it does suppress and help with head smut. But it's these real world situations like Kevin's got and other ones that we're seeing out there this year that really kind of lay the testament to, does this actually work, and how well does it suppress head smut when that situation arises. Like I said, head smut is a pathogen. It's always there. It infects the plant early in the season, but it usually takes a stressor event to really get it to show itself. Hail is usually one of the most common ones that demonstrates that. So we'll continue to get more and more information on this and be able to hopefully be able to recommend and be more precise in how well we see it working here after this year's performance.
Kevin, do you see a future where you stick in a product, say like Xyway, at time of planting, and then you never have to put fungicide on again?
Oh yeah, which I never thought I'd see this. When Gail was telling 3 years ago in Florida when they was fixing to introduce it, I said, this is too good to be true. And the first year we used it in some situations that it didn't work that good in. And once we figured out with the help of FMC the proper way to use it, it's been a beautiful thing. And I've got neighbors galore using it. I mean, there's just thousands of acres of it being used now. Our small irregular shaped fields, it just is a really good fit.
Well, you're in your spray rig right now. It doesn't look like you're in one of your 1 acre patches, but when you're out there, when 10-foot tall corn or 12-foot tall corn, and you think, what if I could prevent this necessity for this pass by doing something at time of planting? It seems to me that you'd probably make that decision every day.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this morning we looked at both sprayers and we've done hit, we're already at 23,000 acres this year on 2 new sprayers. And so I'm tired of riding.
Yeah, right. Well, anyway, this is kind of a fascinating thing. So if you didn't watch the video, dear listener and viewer, go back and watch the previous video about this topic. Kevin just shows you the actual plants. Of course, you've probably seen hailed out corn before. It's a 3-minute video. We wanted to go more in depth with it because we thought this is pretty valuable information that maybe you can apply to your farm. So his name's Gail Stratman with FMC. Kevin Matthews coming at you from a sprayer on a 23,001st acre that he's covering in North Carolina this year. Thanks for being here. We're talking about smut. We're talking about season-long control, and it might save you money and labor and knocked over corn with a late season pass you may not need to make. Till next time, thanks for being here. Share this with somebody that can benefit from it. Like everything else, extremeag.farm, hundreds of videos, hundreds of these podcasts. Share them, let somebody benefit from it. That's why Kevin and his buddies started this whole organization 3 years ago. extremeag.farm. Till next time, I'm Damian Mason.
That's a wrap for this episode of Cutting the Curve, but there's plenty more. Check out extremeag.farm, where you can find past episodes, instructional videos, and articles to help you squeeze more profit out of your farm. Cutting the Curve is brought to you by Advanced Drainage Systems, the leader in agriculture water management solutions.